Superintendent Corey Lunn and School Board Chair George Dierberger have lived through the budget cutting process, and you're here to talk about it. So congratulations for making it through.
Thank you.
But it was not easy, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Tell us the categories that were cut, in specifics if you want.
Sure. All the items were put into categories. Some were accounting shifts, some were activities and athletics. Those were mostly fee increases. There was a calendar item. We have more days in the school year for students than what we need to, according to the
How many?
statute. I think 5 more days.
Oh, okay.
So there was a reduction of 2 days there, and we can talk more about how that's actually going to be offset possibly with some calendar changes with our late start dates,
Yes.
which I know are difficult for parents, including this parent here. Some class size and program adjustments, some energy efficiency savings kind of things. Again, some fees and revenue and fund balance. There's some things that we are going to generate fees to offset the difference we've been talking about. Of course, staff reductions
Yeah,
and
and I'll get
reductions
into that in detail.
transportation.
Mhm.
And we've kind of broke it down just quickly for
Sure.
this interview, and we have to do a lot more detailed work, but about a third of the budget reductions affect the category of administration somehow. If you think of the central office, administrators, principals, office support staff that support administrators, about a third of the total dollar amount fits into that category. About a third are transfer or one-time fee changes that we talked about in the last
Yes.
show. And another third are just from other areas: fee increase, classroom impacts, program impacts. So, as a parent, I feel good about that because that means those reductions are not affecting my child or my classroom or the teachers as much during this first round of budget reductions.
Okay.
As we move on, that's going to get more and more difficult because we've kind of taken the cuts outside the classroom and pushed those as far as we can. But further cuts, we'll have no choice other than to affect the things that happen in the classroom.
Now, a large percentage of cuts, of course, impacted central service. How many staff currently are employed there? And how will that be restructured
The central
after?
service itself, I would hate to give you an inaccurate answer exactly. There are people who are part-time in buildings, part-time in central office. There are people who work in the ECFC building. What would be your estimate of how many people are actually in the central service?
I'd say around 55 or so.
Yeah,
Okay.
I was going to say 40 to 50.
Yeah.
And how will this be restructured now?
Well, there's lots of restructuring. As you know, we have
It's
a
going
hiring.
on right now,
Yeah,
right?
well, it's
Okay.
actually started. When we ran the levy campaign, we knew we were going to have to cut $5 million.
Okay.
And turning the clock back, we had a $10 million gap. Our proposal was to cut $5 and ask for $5 million from the community. So we've been starting this for the past year. So we put a hiring freeze in place. So when somebody left our organization or retired, we did not immediately replace them.
So the work got spread to others.
Yep, so we asked some critical questions, and there are some unfilled positions. So we had to reorganize, we spread work among others.
Unfilled duties at all, Corey? or
Well,
just
in
unfilled
our
positions?
field, there's never any such thing as unfilled duties.
Yeah.
There's nothing we...
Just going to be spread to
Yeah,
others.
there's nothing you cannot continue to do. So
Okay.
other people take it on, and we spread that out. And contrary to maybe some of the beliefs, we have a pretty lean organization already. Most our programs, services, and resources go right in the classroom. So that happened, and now with the budget reduction approvals, there's a number of positions. Like I said, a third of them impact administration, school buildings, principals. We're reorganizing our central office, the office I work in. Currently, we have 2 assistant superintendents and some other assistant director positions. Those will no longer exist as we move forward. Phase 1 is to reduce 1 assistant superintendent position and 2 of these assistant director positions. And phase 2 is to eventually weed out the other assistant superintendent position and replace that with a position at a lesser cost. So that's good and bad. Again, it's protecting the classroom, but it's going to make our job much more difficult in terms of overseeing things, moving forward.
Are we at that point now where it's the classroom? Or can there be more cuts that would not? To me,
Future cuts will impact the classroom much more. I think this first
Yeah.
wave, there's some, but it's
for
pretty
sure.
minimal.
Actually, there's indirect,
because of
strong
our
indirect.
focus. But as we move forward, that'll be more difficult to protect.
Yeah, it's an interesting question, Margot, because in the private sector, when you do go through Six Sigma or lean organizations type thing, you usually find about 3 or 4% that's fat, that's a little extra.
Right.
Well, we've basically cut 3% of our fixed costs right now, lowered our costs. So we're really kind of at the edge of the bone marrow right now. So there's not much left that we can cut that's extra. And going back to the original question, I think from a bigger picture standpoint, the only direction we gave Corey and his team was to protect the classroom at all costs. And the second thing was nothing was sacred. And they did an outstanding job through Corey's leadership to engage the community in the process, as you've heard in the past, and look at Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3, Tier 4. So we're in a position now.
Explain the tiers, George, for those who are not. You know, you're living and breathing this, both
Yeah.
you and Corey. So
Yeah.
this is real lingo to
It's
you.
just a priority order. Again, in our prior talk on the TV, we talked a lot about the budgeting process and how it's fluid and flexible. And of course, we know this because this happens in all districts. So we wanted to make sure we were prepared for anything that might happen from the time we began the process to the end. For example, if our budget projections were coming in higher or lower, we didn't want to have to bring back a group, do that work. We wanted to be prepared. We also wanted to start the work for the next round of budget cuts. And maybe we'll talk about that a little bit later today. So the tiers are priority. Tier 1 are the things that are easiest to do with the least impact to kids in the classroom. So as you go from 2 to 3 to 4, it flips. Tier 4 things are much more difficult and impact the kids more.
Now, Stonebridge, though, would say it's a great impact to their classroom style. Would you agree?
No, it's different.
Yeah.
But they were being overfunded by the tune of about $100,000 a year for the last 6 or 7 years, which they used that money to hire extra paraprofessionals. So when you look at what Corey's has got a tough job, you look at the 9 grade schools that we have, and we've got some grade schools with 30% free and reduced lunch. We've got some kids that are coming in that don't even know English, can't even count or know the alphabet. So we have needs in Lake Elmo and Lily Lake, for example, that are far outweigh what we have at Stonebridge. The colony model still is in place.
Yeah.
We haven't changed the colony model. Colony 1, 2, 3, and 4 are still in place, but we're taking the extra money that we've given them historically in the past and say, well, you're going to be funded just like all the other buildings. And as you know, the parents agreed to that. At the board meeting, the parents came up and said, hey, just fund us at the normal level. We'll be happy with that. And that's what we did.
Okay. Boy, I watched that particular school board meeting. It was hard to watch it. I mean, there were a lot of, yes, it was.
Yeah.
And you both showed a lot of leadership skills, but I mean, it's hard to kind of get sucked in, you know, after you've kind of sat back and done months of decision making, and then to hear final
it's really hard when the kids come out.
Oh, they were wonderful. The little ones talking
First of all, you're so
cute.
proud
I'll read
that
it.
they present themselves
Yeah.
and represent themselves. But
Let me compliment though the Stonebridge parents. They were outstanding that day. They took on a very
You
difficult
used the word
subject.
classy.
Total really
Yeah.
class.
Yeah.
And I think of Bruce and Brian in particular, the way they handled themselves at that meeting. It could have really gotten ugly. And the most powerful moment for me was when they applauded the board after we talked and we said what these budget cuts mean, and they applauded. So they get it. They understand we're in this together, and moving forward, we got to be strong.
If you put the levy on the ballot in this fall's election, and if it passes, what things can be cut next? Do you have any idea yet, or would you rather not go there yet?
Well, yeah, remember we had things in tiers, and I think for next year we went through tiers 1 and 2, halfway through 2. So that means we have halfway through 2 to 4 remaining. And those are actually in priority order as well. So the next thing, we're not done talking budget recommendations. My suggestion to the board is we keep going and we make the list and approve the list if needed for the next school year in 13-14.
You don't think you should adjust it at that time? Are you ready to adjust it at that time?
We will adjust as
Okay.
part of that discussion, but having that as a basis point, and these things can always change. I've told the board, even with the current list, as things change, and if our budget comes in down or up more than we project, we'll come back and look at the list, and again, because it's prioritized.
Yeah.
And we're also working on an add-back restoration list. So if
I
some
wondered about
dollars
that,
come
right. I
available,
wondered
then
if you were
the
going
board
to.
has already prioritized, here's the
see.
things we're going to add back.
Okay.
So again, I think we had a very thoughtful process. Dr. Queener certainly overseed the work with the back process. It was transparent. We had a number of community members involved. We feel really great about the process, and we think it's a good step for the future.
You know, the only other thing I'd add to that, when we went out for the levy this past fall, people didn't understand what the ramifications might be. And now with the prioritization that Corey and his team have gone through and the community, we'll have those items. Say, all right, now if we do go out for levy and if it does fail, here are the items that we're going to be cutting for the following calendar year. So at least we'll have a better communication, direct communication with the public in terms of what the potential impact will be.
But the 65% that don't have children, how will you get to them? I mean, if they don't care whether it's cut
There's
or not.
always a risk to that, you know.
I mean, I'm not saying they
yeah.
don't care, but I mean, they less care maybe.
Well,
than-
regardless of what we have to reduce, that's an issue. And I think what all communities are dealing with, because the demographic trend is less homes that have kids in school have the same issues. So you have to attack it from a broader point and not talk about just kids in the schools, even though I know how that sounds, but it's as a community. And I would argue that what makes the St. Croix Valley so wonderful, in large part, along with many other things, is the excellent school district.
Yeah.
And I was really amazed the number of people that have come forward in the hearings that we had for the budget cuts. We had over 350 people, probably over 8 hours. Over half the people always started with, I came here because of the school district. And that's a huge impact, whether you have kids here or not. And that is a huge plus for our communities.
But let's give people some more credit here too, Margot. Even those people that don't have kids in the school district, they probably had children in the school district at one time. That's one. The second point is they understand that their property values are tied right to the strength of the school district. If our school district, you know, slips or doesn't do quite as well, that has an impact on them financially also. So I think they get that. We just need to do a better job of communicating our value proposition to the community.
We talked about the communicating, and Ray mentioned the over-communicating
Yeah.
and the
Yeah.
too much, and where's the line between marketing, you
Yeah.
know, where it's like,
Right.
what is this kind of the wizard, you know, what's behind the curtain type of deal,
Sure.
you know, and it's a very tough situation,
Sure.
but no question, communication was brought up. In fact, it was brought up before in this survey, post-election survey. But before we get onto that, because I love elections analysis, do you have anything else you want to add on the cuts and that? You feel okay? I mean,
Well,
it wasn't the
you
best.
know-
You
No,
wish
you
it
don't
didn't
feel
have
okay.
to
You don't
happen.
feel
No, I know.
okay.
But I mean, as it
Yeah.
stands right now,
You know, my comments I made at the last board meeting on March 8th, you know, as a new resident, as a father, we live in this district. My kids go to the schools in the district, and as a new superintendent, it was disheartening
yeah.
to, in your first 7 months, to have to take this on. And in some people's eyes, as we've read in the papers, be responsible for what has happened. And that's a hard thing to take personally, because it's my own children attend the school district, and it's been a lot of hard work the last 7 months. We're doing the best we can, and we will continue that hard work. And so it's hard not to put an emotional piece to it, but it is emotional for us.
Which brings me to this question, Corey. I mean, you were really out there. For anyone to say there was a lack of communication, and you know, Carissa and you were working behind the scenes to get the information out there. You were absolutely directly.
It was everywhere.
And you made yourself available, and people didn't show, which had to be disheartening. It's like, whoa, you know, of course there's communication if you'd only show up, you know, but anyhow, there were a lot of, how shall I say, affected, interested parties that didn't show. I mean, I didn't see a lot of other support.
Well, it's kind of hard. This is kind of new to this community. You know, I kind of say that school districts across the state are on the same continuum. There's a budget need, there's a budget issue, they have to talk to their community, they either gain the support, they don't, and another 5 years you're starting the whole trend over. And I think we've been fortunate enough here to be one of the later districts that have reached this crisis.
See, and I worried because it's new, they should have
yes.
been out more advocating. You
when
know,
I
if it gets
was-
used to it,
yep.
okay, we another budget cut, okay, we're kind of used to it, then more apathy. But
a lot
this
of districts
case,
have done
oh my
this
gosh.
10 years ago. Now, again, I had mentioned we have done that on some scale, but this was a significant scale. So part of it is teaching, learning, communicating. I think the lesson I learned is, you know, I had to be over-involved. Number one, I was new, and it kind of attracted people to come and listen to the message. And number two, we didn't have another group in place to carry that message, so that became my responsibility. Right now, we're trying to get more people engaged, involved, and have those talks. But the third point is we cannot just talk to people when we need money. We need to talk to them all times,
Yeah.
and I feel really good about our efforts. Most recently, I made myself available at 2 local coffee establishments.
say
And how many showed?
I had 4 people show up, but
Okay.
that's okay. You know, I know that's
Okay.
time for
I mean,
my
you are
family and
making
work,
yourself
but,
available.
for those 4 people, that was important to them, that was crucial to them, I was
Mm-hmm.
happy to do that. So we've had an open invitation for emails, phone calls. George and I have invited people in with questions. Sometimes they respond, sometimes they don't.
What's the
but,
disinterest? Have you picked it up yet? Was there anything in that you're...
I guess, again, as a new person, the one thing that has struck me a little odd is I hear about trust a lot.
Okay.
But everything I have seen since I've been here has been really open, transparency, and information. And so I think over time that'll pay off. But I've been taken back a little bit of some of the comments related to a lack of trust.
Yeah.
And maybe that's just because we haven't done a good enough job explaining what happens in the school district, the processes, the information, the effects of those things. And we're committed in our strategic plan. We're committed to these things, having better customer service, more information, more communication, sharing the positives that happen in our schools.
I'll add one
Yeah.
other thing. You know, when you do forecasting, which is what is such a difficult process, you know, we've been forecasting because of lower birth rates, we've been forecasting a downward trend over the last number of years. There's still a tremendous opportunity for us to actually grow the number of students that we have in our school district. And so with the implementation of some marketing programs, communication programs, one of the things that's on the line items is for us to do some very classy advertising in our schools. They already are there with their products and their advertising. We don't get any compensation for that. And just the Pony logo alone, Margot, we don't get compensated for
Right.
people printing that logo. So we're going to do a better job of capturing those dollars, and that's the money we'll use for marketing. So we're not taking out a general
Sure.
fund.
Okay.
It's just going to be the money we generate through advertising. So I think that's one key point. But keep in mind, we are starting and we're beginning a STEM, science, technology,
Yeah, no,
engineering, and math
that's
curriculum.
terrific, actually.
Next fall, we'll be the largest school district in the state of Minnesota and probably less than 10 in the country.
Right.
That will be K through 12 for STEM. And we did it all through private donations. So that value proposition, there's 3 main things that I think that'll make Carissa Keister smile. One is we have all-day kindergarten that's free.
She's smiling. Go ahead.
Good. All-day kindergarten that's free. Not many districts
Right.
do that. 2, we're going to have STEM in the entire school district. So in K through 6, all those kids, the junior highs, pre-engineering classes, robotics classes, we're going to be partnering with some local businesses on medical devices as well. So I mean, you look at some of the things that we're doing, and it's really
That's great, because you have funding. You were smart to partner
We
with
didn't
an outside.
rely,
But
yeah.
is all-day kindergarten in jeopardy at any point?
well, it's on the list of things to look at. But I'll tell you, for parents, that's a huge deal. So they're paying thousands of dollars a month for daycare. And not that this is daycare in any way, stretch, or form, but now they can take their child, put them in kindergarten for free. The cost shift there goes to us, but it's free for them. The third point I wanted to make sure that we get in here too is our K through 3 classrooms are 20-1. We have 20 kids per teacher in our K through 3s. That's one of the lowest in the Twin Cities. So that personalized attention early on is so important as the child learns and grows and causes less issues when they get older.
Let's-
So I want to make sure we hit those
Sure.
3 points really hard.
Let's go to the post-election survey. Okay, when was it done?
Finished up about 3 weeks ago.
And when did it begin?
I think they took 2 weeks
Oh,
to complete the survey.
how come you didn't do it soon after to really capture the high emotion?
Well, number one, there were a lot of things we were working on.
Like budget cutting?
Yeah, budget cutting. Number 2, as with anything we do, we go out and look at a number of scenarios and what the best survey would be at the best cost. And number 4, we had an opportunity to conduct the survey about half the cost what it would normally do. We're a member of the 916 Intermediate District, and in their budget, every other year they set aside $10,000 for any of their membership districts that want to do the survey. So we applied, got in line, got the whole $10,000, so it saved us significant dollars to do the levy. So taking a little bit more time for a lower cost, and plus, you know, when you prepare a survey, there's a lot of work that has to be done in terms of gathering information, coming up with the questions, and the third thing is It's based on the voter file information. So the voter file information doesn't even come available until a month after the election. So you think of the election as November, the information came about in December. We had winter break there. We were working on the questions. We got things ready to go. Mid-January, I think, is when the first call was made to over the 400 people. And then they have to take a couple of weeks to analyze the data. There were a number of open-ended comments that all had to be polished, organized, put in the categories. So I've personally known about the results for the last month.
How many people were asked?
400,
responded,
about
you'll hear me say?
the
Okay.
same number as the survey that was done a year ago at this time.
Okay, 400, and the response rate, I mean, did they have to keep dialing to get new people, or how did that go?
Well, what they do, it's a scientific survey, so it matches the population. So there are multiple people calling, the computer controls who's calling whom.
Okay.
So when the computer realizes you've reached a certain percent that matches your parents, it doesn't let anyone else call any more parents. Whatever the subgroup is, age group, senior citizens, families with kids, without kids. So it's very controlled.
And what questions were asked? How many were asked?
37 questions, I
Oh,
believe.
I'm surprised you had people
Yeah.
hang in there that long.
Yeah, well,
Wow.
it took about 25 minutes. They go pretty quick.
Okay.
And everybody was glad to tell us their thoughts and opinions on the
Okay.
questions that were asked.
And the key findings were? George, feel free to jump in, too.
He's doing great.
Yeah, well, there were some interesting
You look
things.
like Dorian. Okay, good.
You know, it's interesting. I think a key finding was if we ran the election today, there's a lot of voter remorse. There's more information they have, and it would pass today.
Of those who responded, how many had actually voted?
Well, they were all people who had voted. They called registered voters because that's what was in the database.
Oh.
And that's what we wanted. We wanted the opinion of the people who voted. Now,
Oh,
they
that bothers me, you know that.
well,
Yeah.
but then with the questions are designed with that in mind, because what we wanted to know was of the people who voted, why did they vote the way they did. So we have a breakdown by age, demographics, all those things. Now, a question for the other folks would be, why didn't you vote?
Absolutely.
But it's hard to glean information of what people who didn't vote, why they voted the way they did, because they didn't vote. So.
Boy, anecdotally, it was pretty strong out there why they didn't vote. So I'm surprised they didn't do a survey of the district residents, call them up, say, you know, did you vote? No. Why not? You know, kind of deal. How were you able to find the parents, that the parents didn't vote? How were
Well,
you
we have
able
to cross-reference those lists.
Okay.
We have, again, it's not our interest to know who vote yes or no, and
Yeah.
we can't. But
Yeah.
we have a list of our parents. Public information is who you vote. You
Yeah.
just cross-reference those.
I think a couple of key things for me. Only 43% of the parents voted that have kids in the school district.
Okay.
Normally, you see that over
60%.
60%.
Right.
So that was troubling, you know,
Yeah.
to us, and that's why I think there was some voter remorse out there. Remember, we only lost by 600 votes. 13,500 cast. We lost by 600. So all we needed were 300 people.
But you know, every
301.
election's a new election.
Oh, no question.
I mean,
Yeah.
you start from scratch.
No question. And this fall, if we decide to go out, because the need still exists, you're going to have a tremendous turnout with all the controversial items that are on the ballot.
That
So,
I agree with.
so I think that's going to be a tough decision for the board. We're going to do a follow-up survey here in the next month or so to further define that, and what would you be interested in? And only one question, though. I think the board's pretty solid on one question.
Okay.
moving
To
forward.
make you feel a little bit about
Yeah.
the survey, the results are put in the groups by how frequently you vote. Typically, someone who's voted 0 or 1 in the last 5 elections, 2 to 3 or 4 to 5. So all that data is broken down by voter preference, frequency, gender,
Yeah, no, I've seen
age,
that.
all
Yeah,
that
it's
data.
pretty good.
But again, this is typical. This is what districts do. It's another purpose to ask people why they chose to vote or not.
Yeah.
We were trying to analyze the voting results of the people who voted and why they voted the way they did.
You are aware too, aren't you guys, that sometimes when people don't go to the polls, for example, there were parents I know, they didn't go because they felt guilty, they would have voted no. This is why they said, because it would have impacted them, their family financially. They wanted to vote for the kids. They wanted their kids affected. But they would have felt guilty to go and vote no, so they stayed away from the polls. Are you aware that that does occur? People stay away from the polls to avoid the guilt that would have been cast in their vote. But anyhow, just keep those kind of things in mind. That's why I asked Corey if you had surveyed at all people who didn't vote to get their reason, why did you stay away? You know, and then and those who did vote, now I do have questions on those who that you were able to reach. What reasons were given for voting? What specific reasons were given for voting in favor of it? And what specific ones were voted for voting against it?
Well, like I said, all those comments were captured in the narrative form that
Yeah.
we got 2 days ago.
Oh, okay. So you haven't had a real
yeah.
chance to get through it. It's a lot.
There was 36 pages of data. And again, I think what the important things we gleaned from it is less than half our parents, 43%, chose to vote. In part, it could be due to that.
Yeah, who knows? Yeah, who knows?
We found out, reinforced who votes in this community, at least in that type of election.
Yes, you can find that out.
Lots of information about where people get their information from.
That's
and
good. Where did they say?
this will make Carissa smile too.
Yeah.
It was district newsletters,
Yeah.
district information.
Yeah.
The impact of a local support group was on the bottom, so that tells us that that group didn't have much of an impact, which makes sense.
Stop
'cause
right there,
That
'cause
was very late when those efforts were started.
When
so.
he arrived today, I said, it's not going to be as easy of a talk as you normally get.
Oh, it never is. What do you mean?
Okay, you tell me that they get the information through Chris, and yet now you're putting the
District
shareholder, yeah,
newsletters.
through the newsletter, right? Now you're putting the shareholders report online. I mean, how prudent is that? You should be giving the information to them. They shouldn't have to
Nope,
get to
that
you.
was a cost savings move, and
Wow.
everyone did get a postcard, though. It's not that they just didn't send it. A postcard was sent saying, "Hey, this is available."
But again,
Those
you're
you-
making them go
Okay,
to it.
well-
You're selling what I consider selling
Yeah.
something. You need the money. You should be sending the information to the people, not making them go to you.
Well, when you ask a group of local residents what they suggest to be cut, and that
Yeah.
comes as a high item.
I don't know if
we
they thought it
respect
through.
that.
It worries me.
This show too was one of the
Yeah.
items that they were cutting.
Yep, I know.
Yep, and I think it goes down to we are in a position now where we have to protect the classroom.
Yeah.
And you have to prioritize those things. This
But-
isn't a matter of what we like or don't or what we think
But if you
impact.
don't get
It's-
the information out to people, you're no longer protecting the classroom because they're getting a very partial, no longer an impartial take on what's going on. So right now, while it all seems fine in that, when they need the information, they're going to say, "Wow, you know what? We only see this one-sided." So be careful on that too.
Well, two quick points. One is we did do mailings to the entire residences explaining the 3 votes and what
Yep,
the
saw
impact
them.
was
Yep.
on their taxes. I
Yep.
mean, legally you have to do that.
Yeah, yeah.
And 2, shows like this are critically important for us to communicate what we're doing in the district. So we need ways we have to fund this somehow because this is so important for the community.
And
to
I
hear
think you
voice.
understand that the piece where it gets out the impartial piece. I mean, no one tells me you guys are great. No, Chris, and no one tells me look. These are the questions you have to
Yeah,
write. I mean,
right.
into
Oh,
your
no,
cre-
no.
into your-
No one tells you what to do,
That's right.
Margo.
Into your-
We know that.
I didn't see the question.
No, that's right. Into your credit.
Yeah.
But anyhow, I guess we have to wrap, unfortunately. But yeah, take the survey results and think about the different things that weren't asked, the information that isn't in the results, and figure it
Should
out.
just mention
Yeah.
at the March 22nd board meeting,
Yeah.
the survey results are going to be presented
Okay.
on TV live in much more detail.
And with the anecdote
we
and all
can
the
come back,
information
yeah.
that too.
Yeah.
That would be great, Corey.
We can come back with all the specific details, and that will be available.
Very good. Thank you both. Thank
Yep.
you.